Un Xanax, vă rog.
Aveți rețeta?
Nu, dar nu vreau decât o pastiluță. Știți, sunt într-o situație și aș vrea să mă calmez. Nu eu l-am pus pe net. Soțul meu a adus computerul la reparat.
Domnișoară!
Ce-ai, domnule? Lasă-mă în pace!
Te rog, privește unghia de la Pierre Vaillant, ai uitat?
Lăsați-mă, domnule, în pace! Ce aveți? Cine este pentru ca doamna Cilibiu să rămână profesoara copiilor dumneavoastră? Vedeți că ați blocat trotuarul!
Înseamnă că este nevinovată.
Să vadă clipul și cei care nu l-au văzut.
Îl ascultă la oral.
Da, și eu vă rog să vă opriți, gata.
Nu oprim nimic, vreau să vedem până la finalizare.
Adică noi suntem la o școală bună.
Sunteți niște jigodi!
Asta e inadmisibil!
Niște ședință umană. Cu cât opinia pe mai mărginită, mai importantă.
Radu Jude's latest film, Bad Luck Banging or Loony Porn, has garnered attention everywhere as it rolls out internationally, not only because it begins with a sexually graphic personal moment between a teacher and her husband, but also because it uses a unique film language to tell a story steeped in misogyny and censorship and hypocrisy and bigotry. Joining screen watching from his friend's office in Romania and very kindly fitting into my schedule, which I'm very grateful for, is Radu Jude. Thank you so much for your time, Radu.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you so much.
It might seem strange starting with this question, but the opening of your film reminded me of the opening of Steven Spielberg's Jaws. And I say that because he's on the record saying that you only need to show one graphic shark attack and its impact ripples through the whole film. And I think your sex scene has that effect too, yes? Was that part of your intention?
Well, I never thought it. It's the most crazier connection I ever heard, but I'm still thinking about it. I actually think that if you read about Joe's production of the film, it's I think they showed it only once or twice because they didn't have enough money to make it properly. So it was quite. So they said, then it's, yes, you show it once and then you just show the shadow of it and it's enough.
That's true. Yes, that's true. But do you agree? Yeah. But do you agree that there's a certain element of those opening scenes are so impactful, they go with your character and go with your narrative in the audience's mind for the rest of the film?
Well, yes, absolutely. And in a way, that was the idea. Well, not to make a impactful scene necessarily at the beginning, but because all the film is built around this video, I wanted because that was not supposed to be like that in the project, in the script of the film. Only in the editing phase I put it at the beginning because when I made in my mind, it was very clear that when she's walking on the street, for instance, the first part of the film, my mind would connect the things with the story, but I knew the story in advance, of course.
Right.
But the viewers then they will just see a woman walking on the street, and it was important for me that the viewer connects this scene, this part, with the video in a way and see differences between them, or I don't know, have at least a question mark about that.
For sure.
So and also I wanted the viewers to be, because it's a film about a kind of a judgment of this woman for what happened, for this video basically. So I wanted the viewers to have the how is in the court when you have the evidence.
Sure.
So they can look at the evidence and they can decide themselves: is it dirty? Is it nice? Is it okay? Can we judge it? Can we not judge it? Etc. 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 So every viewer has an opinion, I think. in the end.
Well, that's very true. And that I guess that leads me directly into my next question. You challenge your audience by depicting these hardcore sex scenes, and many will look away from them, but then you ask your audience to side with the freedom of the participant, of Emi, to do as she wishes. How do you view your audience? Are they just viewers? Have they become voyeurs? I think that really interests me.
Well, first of all, you mentioned the word hardcore, and I think that's not accurate.
Yeah, okay.
I wanted a scene which is quite, let's say, quite banal. I mean, it's not a hardcore pornography. It's not violence, or I don't know, some extreme behavior. Not that I would be against that, but I wanted in the film to be on the, let's say, on the margin, not on the extreme behavior,
sure,
but to have a kind of regular, if I can say so, thing.
Yep.
And yes, there is, because you asked me if the viewers, how they treat this scene, there is from the beginning already a knowledge, and I think now it's quite there are a lot of studies and a lot of thinking behind that. There is a relationship between cinema and voyeurism from the beginning of cinema. There is even a short film of a guy called Joe Gibbons from the 70s. It's a 30-minute film called Spying. And it's a film where he's spying his neighbors for real. I mean, with the camera, he's looking in their courtyards. So sometimes see some naked women bathing in the sun, or a kiss or something like that. So he really showed that there is a connection. There is a desire to watch others, others in their intimacy, even if this intimacy is staged like here, but the tendency, the impulse, is there, I think, all the time, a bit of desire to see the others in their private lives without being watched. So I think this shows as well a variation around that. And also I think that, because I never practiced that myself, that people who make this kind of amateur porn videos and upload them on the internet, they somehow know that the viewers would like that, because they would like to watch real people having, real amateur sex, as it is called, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a double thing, I think.
Sure, that's exactly right. I love that whole first act where Emilia walks the streets of Bucharest, and it's such an unconventional way to convey story elements. We learn there's an election happening, so that moral order is a high issue, and the modern man will sort of instantly abuse a woman just for complaining about his parking. So we get some idea of the political, the social landscape that she's trying to defend herself in. And as those scenes continue to unfold, I found them so compelling. And on top of that, you and your DOP, Marius Pandaru, the way you lose her in the frame and then pan across the street, then pick her up in the frame, it's such a beautiful way to convey a story. Give us some insight into structuring those scenes.
Well, I would say, and I'm glad that you mentioned that there is a story, because I also believe there is a story told in a maybe a little bit different way, because many people say, well, this part of the film at least doesn't have a story.
Oh.
And
they're not watching. They're not really watching the film. Then I say they're not really watching.
Yeah, it was people, especially in Romania, saying, "Well, it's just a woman walking on the streets. So what? I mean, where's the story? I mean, 30 minutes for that—that's ridiculous. You could have that in 2 minutes." And of course, it is a kind of play with these conventions of cinema, because, of course, in a, let's say, traditional way of storytelling in cinema, that scene would be probably 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, she would just cross 2 streets and go to the high school, and to the school, and that would be. But there's also another way of understanding the story, not only by the narrative elements, narrative events, which happens, which are not a lot in this part, but as I said, it's especially because cinema shows us the thing. You can understand the story by associations and by the juxtaposition you can find there. And I think in this part is based, like all the film in a way, much more obvious in the second part, but also here, that it's always the viewer is invited, if you want, to make connections, to make juxtapositions between the characters, the story, and other elements. In this case, a billboard sometimes, a fight in the street, cars parked everywhere like it's our city all the time, elections, posters, sounds, all these kind of things become part of the story, or better put, part of the film, even if they can be considered around the story, let's say.
Those scenes made me smarter as a viewer, because I'm watching that and I had that initial reaction of, okay, she's walking around the streets, but then I realized that you were inviting me into the film. You were saying, look in every frame, try and see what your intention is, and that's when I started to realize this is pretty incredible stuff. So congratulations.
Oh no, so thank you. Yes, it is like that. The viewer is invited to be active, to watch the images, and you know, it's I mean, to really watch and see and try and I have a friend who's 91 years old, a Romanian writer, Radu Jude, and he always says that he's really a brilliant literature writer and a cinephile, and he also wrote scripts in the 60s, quite good for 2 or 3 films. And he said that he watches TV like he reads a novel. So he never watches TV just like that, you know. So when he's zapping on his TV set, he says, you know, I have the attention like I read a novel. And he always finds amazing things out of this. You know, he always finds some details. He watches the news, and then he zaps to, I don't know, some cartoon on the other and says, you know, I made this juxtaposition just by accident. I was watching, I don't know, a story about sexual workers in Bucharest, and then I switched and it was, I don't know which cartoon, you know, this kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's a good lesson, an important lesson to try. I never succeeded like that, but I like to be an active viewer in everything.
The other, I think the other point you make, and it's really important, and it reminded me of a great quote that the actress Maggie Smith, the great British actress, she was having trouble with the director over a script, and they were trying to figure out what lines to say, and she just said, cut it out, show it. I don't need to say it, it's film, just show me on screen, film something. And that's essentially what you do in that opening period without any dialogue. You tell this amazing complex story with next to no dialogue, just the sounds of the city. I'm going on about it because I love that part of the film, but it reminded me of that quote. So.
Oh yeah, but I think here we need to be a little bit more careful, because I like films with dialogue.
Sure. And
I believe that dialogue has a part in the film if it's put in an interesting or potent or important or visually interesting context. So if you show an actor saying a line, so if you show a performance of saying something, it becomes cinema. It's not only literature. So I'm a bit
understand.
Split into this question.
Yeah, of course, yes. I guess I should point out that very few Australian audiences will have seen anything like your Act 2. The use of collage and commentary is absolutely masterful, but it is a very unique way to tell a story. What are the challenges and what are the virtues of collage filmmaking?
Yes, well, yeah, actually, you know, there is some Australians which do a very different type of collage films, which are marvelous. Do you know Soda Jerk?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I interviewed the girls who did Soda Jerk. Yeah, that's a wonderful collage film.
Oh yeah, it's what's called Terror Nullius.
Terror Nullius. Yeah. The two Melbourne girls. Yeah, terrific.
Yeah, I loved it, and I really admire Soda Jerk. And so I think actually it's the same. In the film I've made, it's also another way of not telling the story, but somehow creating another type of associations. And here I use the more, let's say, a literary device, which is usually, as you said before, not accepted in cinema. Mostly people will say, well, cinema, you have to show. But I show things and I show text as well. So there's a mixture of literary quotations with all kinds of images that, in my view, if you take these images and words out of context, because they are taken many times out of their original context, and you put them together, they become like elements. It's like you take an actor and you put it in the set. It's exactly the same operation in a way. You take an image and you put it in the film, and you take then a text or a sound and you put it together. And this is a very powerful, or could be a very powerful cinematic thing, because this is what cinema does. It's through montage, through editing, it's creating this association. So I wanted in that part more to make a kind of, apart from what I said, a kind of landscape of ideas. So if you have in the first part a geographical landscape of the story, so to speak, in the second part, you might have a kind of civilizational and philosophical landscape of where the story takes place. And then in the third part, you see the result of these things coming together somehow.
I guess finally, watching the third act of the film, in which Emi is essentially put on trial by the parents, I was reminded of recent scenes in the US of parent-teacher meetings going off the rails over in that case, the vaccination issues. How has this degree of entitlement become normal? And that's what those scenes sort of say to me, that they're able to stand up there, put this young woman on trial for over a personal issue, and they feel entitled to be able to do that. What does your film say about that degree of societal change?
Well, I think there's a lot to say here, and I don't know. I have only some intuitions, because I don't see all the connections or all the causes of that. But and I don't know the situation in the United States, but I can imagine it. I mean, I didn't study it or something, but I think in Romania there's two things which happened. On one hand, there is the fact that the educational system, which more or less was, well, not perfect, but it was somehow okay in the communist dictatorship. We must say it. I mean, it was all the villages have schools. My parents come from the countryside, and before communist dictatorship, there was no schooling there, and the communists made schools, public schools for everybody. So if my father made a university, he always said, well, I owe that to the communist regime, like it or not. And then after the 1989 revolution, little by little, education was systematically destroyed, because it was less and less funded, less and less supported by the state. Many things were politically done. I mean, the money that goes to some schools or not, or the people who are in charge are only politically named, so they are basically incompetent, many of them. So the new educational system is much worse in the end for many people, because there is a kind of in the bigger cities where there's a little bit more money and more chances to a decent living, there are schools which might be considered okay, but in the small cities, in the poor cities, or in the countryside, there's almost nothing left.
Right.
It's really terrible. That's one thing. And on the other thing, on the other side, I think there's more and more a pressure of the parents either to put their kids in private schools or to try and control and impose their values on the teaching system.
Yep.
And you know, it's always a kind of pressure from both sides. So on one hand, you have the lack of funding. On the other hand, you have the pressure of the parents more and more and more, which created a completely fake system. For instance, there are parents that if the kid don't get a good grade, they go to the teacher and make a scandal to change that grade, because they say, you destroy my kid, I need these grades for a good high school or for a good university afterward.
Sure.
It's absolutely crazy, you know.
Mate, you've made an incredible film. Thank you so much, Radu Jude, for being here with us on Screen Watching, and I look forward to see how the Australian public takes to your movie. It's going to make headlines everywhere, as it should. For all the right
Thank you so
reasons.
much.
So all the very best, mate, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.